The sterile white corridors of the Hegemony research vessel Dominion's Edge hummed with anticipation as Admiral Thyrak reviewed the impossible discovery floating in their cargo bay. In her 3 decades commanding the Hegemony's most advanced exploration fleets, she had catalogued the ruins of countless extinct civilizations, but never had they found a perfectly preserved specimen from a species they had personally eradicated. Today, that would change everything they thought they knew about the fragile humans of Earth. Admiral Thyrak stood nearly 9 feet tall, her chitinous exoskeleton gleaming silver under the ship's harsh lighting. Like all members of the Kytherian Hegemony, she had been bred for conquest. Her 4 arms moved with mechanical precision as she manipulated the holographic displays showing their latest acquisition. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Status report, Science Commander Zephy's, she ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally overseen the subjugation of 17 star systems. Zephy's, a smaller Kytherian with deep purple shell markings indicating his scientific caste, scuttled forward with his data slate. Admiral, the Stasis pod was recovered from the debris field of what appears to be a human evacuation vessel. Based on the deterioration patterns, it's been drifting for approximately 180 years since the final human exodus from Earth. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The Kytherian Hegemony had swept across human space like a tide of inevitability. Humanity's so-called United Earth Defense Force had crumbled within 18 months of first contact. Their primitive kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion systems had been laughably inadequate against Kytherian plasma artillery and gravity manipulation technology. Any identification on the occupant? Thyrak asked. The pod's data core was partially corrupted, but we managed to extract some basic information, Zephy's replied, his secondary arms working furiously on his tablet. The subject appears to be a human male, age approximately 35 at time of stasis. Name, Colonel Marcus Webb. Designation. He paused, consulting his notes. Something called Special Operations Command. Admiral Thyrak's laugh was like grinding metal. Special Operations, how quaint. The humans always did have a talent for grandiose titles to mask their weakness. The historical records were clear. Humans had been a peaceful species masquerading as warriors. Their entire military doctrine had been based on defensive positions and retreating when faced with superior force. When the Hegemony's war fleets had arrived at Earth, the humans had evacuated their planet rather than make a meaningful stand. Cowards to the very end. Shall we begin the revival process, Admiral? Zephy's asked. Indeed. High Command is eager to study a preserved human specimen. Perhaps we can finally understand how such a pathetic species managed to spread across so many worlds before we arrived to claim them. As they moved toward the medical bay, neither Thyrak nor Zephy's noticed the small warning indicator blinking. On the stasis pod's control panel, a symbol that, had they understood ancient human military protocols, might have given them pause. The symbol read, classified, Tier Omega clearance required. But the Kytherians had never bothered to learn human writing beyond the basic surrender documents they had collected as trophies. Why would they need to understand the language of the defeated? The medical bay had been specially prepared for the revival. Banks of monitoring equipment surrounded a single biobed, all designed to study every aspect of human physiology as their guest awakened. Dr. Thyrak, the Hegemony's leading expert on extinct species biology, supervised the preparation. With almost academic excitement. This is a remarkable opportunity, Dr. Thyrak said, his smaller frame indicating his membership in the medical caste. We have extensive records of human anatomy from the specimens we collected during the conquest, but never a living subject. Think of what we might learn about their cognitive processes, their emotional responses to defeat. Admiral Thyrak nodded approvingly. The High Council is particularly interested in understanding human command structures. How did they coordinate their retreat so effectively if they were such inferior strategists? Perhaps this colonel can provide insights, Dr. Thyrak suggested as he began the revival sequence. According to our databases, the rank of colonel indicated a mid-level command position. Important enough to have useful information, but not so important as to be deliberately uncooperative. The stasis pod began its warming cycle, ancient human technology interfacing seamlessly with Kytherian medical systems. Atmospheric processors adjusted the air mixture to match archived human requirements. Temperature controls slowly brought the pod's interior to optimal human metabolic levels. Fascinating, Dr. Thyrak murmured, watching the readings. Even their stasis technology shows their fundamental limitations. This system is purely biological, no quantum consciousness preservation. No neural backup systems. They were truly a primitive species. What none of them noticed was how efficiently the human stasis system was interfacing with their advanced computers, or how certain subroutines in the pod's programming were quietly accessing the hegemony's databases, downloading star charts, fleet positions, and military protocols with silent precision. As the revival process continued, Admiral Thyrak felt a familiar satisfaction. Soon they would have answers to the few remaining questions about humanity's brief and inglorious chapter in galactic history. This Colonel Webb would be their window into understanding how Earth's military had managed to evacuate billions of people across dozens of worlds before the inevitable defeat. After all, what secrets could one sleeping human soldier possibly possess that would threaten the mighty Kytherian hegemony? The pod's lid began to hiss as the seals prepared to open, and Admiral Thyrak leaned forward eagerly. In moments, she would be face to face with a living relic of the galaxy's most overrated extinct species. She had no idea that Colonel Marcus Webb had not been sleeping for 180 years. He had been waiting. The stasis pod's lid opened with a soft, pneumatic sigh, releasing a cloud of preserved atmosphere that had been sealed for nearly 2 centuries. Admiral Thyrak and her scientific team leaned forward, their various optical sensors focused on the emerging figure within. Colonel Marcus Webb appeared exactly as the historical records suggested humans should, pale skin from the long sleep, brown hair cropped in what their databases identified as a military-style, lean muscular build typical of the species. He lay motionless for several seconds, then his chest began to rise and fall with steady, controlled breathing. Dr. Thyrak monitored the readings with scientific fascination. Remarkable adaptation to revival. Most species experience significant disorientation upon awakening from extended stasis. His vital signs are not only stable, they're optimal. Webb's eyes opened slowly, revealing sharp blue irises that immediately began scanning the room with methodical precision. He didn't appear startled or confused. Instead, he seemed to be cataloging every detail of his surroundings with the systematic approach of someone conducting a tactical assessment. "Colonel Webb," Dr. Thyrak said through the translation matrix, his voice carefully modulated to sound non-threatening. "I am Dr. Thyrak of the Kytherian Hegemony. You have been in stasis for 180 years. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Webb sat up slowly, his movements fluid despite the extended dormancy. Translation matrix. Impressive. Quantum-based, judging by the harmonic frequencies. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "And yes, Doctor, I understand perfectly. Though I have to say, your pronunciation of Standard Terran could use some work." Science Commander Zephes shifted nervously. "How do you know about our translation?" "Technology? Human databases contain no records of quantum linguistics." Webb stretched methodically, each movement precise and controlled. "Oh, we knew quite a bit about quantum mechanics, Commander. We just didn't advertise it." He swung his legs over the side of the biobed, And Admiral Thyrak noticed how he tested the floor's stability before putting his full weight on it. So, 180 years. That means you found me around 2341, local galactic standard? How could you possibly know our dating system? Dr. Thyrak asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier confidence. Lucky guess, Webb replied with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Tell me, how did the integration go? The planetary transitions, infrastructure adaptation, population management? I imagine it was quite the administrative challenge. Admiral Thyrak felt the first stirring of unease. What integration? We conquered your worlds. There was no integration. Your species was evacuated or eliminated. Webb paused in his stretching routine, fixing the Admiral with a steady gaze. Eliminated? That seems inefficient. Standard doctrine would suggest population retention for labor optimization and resource management. He tilted his head slightly. Unless you encountered unexpected resistance? Administrative complications? There was no resistance, Admiral Thyrak said firmly. Your military collapsed within 18 months. Your United Earth Defense Force was completely outmatched by our superior technology and tactics. UEDF? Webb's eyebrows rose. Oh, you engaged the Defense Force. That explains a lot. He stood up fully, and something about his posture perfectly balanced. Weight distributed for instant movement in any direction made the Kytherians instinctively step back. No wonder the timeline was so compressed. The Defense Force was never designed for extended operations. Science Commander Zephyrs checked his data slate nervously. According to our records, the UEDF represented Earth's primary military organization. Are you suggesting there were others? Webb began what appeared to be simple calisthenics, but Dr. Thyrak's medical scanners were registering impossible readings. The human's muscle density was far higher than their archived data suggested. His bone structure significantly more robust, and his nervous system was operating at enhanced capacity. The UEDF was our public face, Webb explained casually while performing what looked like basic stretches but were actually complex biomechanical assessments of his current physical capabilities. Planetary defense, disaster response, peacekeeping operations. Good people, but they were essentially a police force with better equipment. Then what were you? Admiral Thyrak demanded. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Special Operations Command reported to a different authority structure, Webb said, now testing his reflexes with movements too quick for the Kytherian. Optical systems to properly track. We handled specialized problems. Long-term strategic planning, asset placement, deep reconnaissance. Dr. Thyrak was frantically reviewing his scanner data. Colonel, your physical capabilities appear to exceed our baseline human parameters by significant margins. Are you experiencing any augmentation effects from the stasis process? Webb paused his exercise routine and looked at the doctor with what might have been amusement. Augmentation? No, doctor. Standard special ops conditioning, nothing more. Though I have to admit, 180 years of biostasis has left me feeling surprisingly refreshed. He walked to the room's single viewport, moving with a predator's grace that made Admiral Thyrak's combat instincts flare. Looking out at the stars, Webb seemed to be orienting himself, calculating position and trajectory with apparent ease. Interesting heading, he observed. You're maintaining position in the Kepler 442 system. That's significant. How could you possibly determine our location from stellar positioning? Science Commander Zephyrs asked, his voice rising with barely controlled alarm. Basic navigation, Commander. We learned early that dependence on technology makes you vulnerable when systems fail. Webb turned back to face them, and his smile was perfectly friendly. Speaking of which, I couldn't help but Notice your ship's power signature. Very impressive energy output, but there's an interesting harmonic resonance in your quantum core frequency. Might want to have your engineers look at that. Dr. Thyrak checked his instruments in confusion. Our quantum cores are operating within normal parameters. How could you detect resonance patterns? Enhanced hearing is part of the conditioning, Webb explained. Along with improved pattern recognition, enhanced spatial awareness, accelerated cognitive processing. Standard modifications for extended deep space operations. Admiral Thyrak felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Modifications? You're describing systematic enhancement of human capabilities. Our records indicated humans were biologically static. Your records were based on civilian populations and Defense Force personnel, Webb said gently. Special Operations Command operated under different parameters. We had to be prepared for extended assignments, long-term infiltration, survival in hostile environments. He walked back to the biobed and sat down, the movement casual but perfectly controlled. Now, I have a question for you, Admiral. When you conquered human space, did you actually verify the elimination of all military assets? Or did you simply accept the surrender of the publicly acknowledged forces? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Admiral Thyrak realized that everything they thought they knew about humanity's defeat might be incomplete. The single human who claimed to be merely a standard Special Operations Officer was demonstrating capabilities that their entire intelligence apparatus had missed. Colonel, she said carefully, are you suggesting that Earth's military forces were not completely defeated? Webb's smile widened slightly, and for the first time, Admiral Thyrak saw something in his eyes that made her understand why this human might have been kept in stasis for 180 years. Admiral, Webb said quietly, I'm suggesting that Earth's military forces were never truly engaged. Admiral Thyrak's mandibles clicked nervously as she processed Webb's casual declaration. What do you mean Earth's military forces were never engaged? We have comprehensive records of the 18-month campaign. Battles at Proxima Centauri, the siege of Alpha Centauri, the final assault on Luna Base. Webb stood up from the biobed, and his movement had a quality that made Dr. Thyrak's instruments spike with readings that shouldn't have been possible. Those were beautiful operations, Admiral. Textbook tactical withdrawals with calculated resistance to maintain believability. The UEDF performed exactly as designed. Designed? Science Commander Zephy stepped closer to his scanner array, trying to get clearer readings on the human. You're speaking as if the defeat was intentional. Not the defeat, Webb corrected, beginning what appeared to be a simple inspection of the medical equipment around him. Except his fingers moved across the interfaces with impossible precision, and somehow the Kytherian technology began responding to his touch. The evacuation, there's a significant difference. Dr. Thyrak watched in growing alarm as his medical scanners began displaying data streams he didn't recognize. Colonel, please step away from the equipment. You shouldn't be able to interface with our systems, shouldn't I? Webb glanced at a holographic display that materialized at his gesture, a display showing the complete technical specifications of the research vessel they were aboard. Quantum matrix computing, dark matter, power cores, gravity manipulation drives. Impressive engineering, though I notice you're still using second-generation plasma confinement. We solved that efficiency problem about 30 years before you arrived at Earth. Admiral Thyrak felt her combat instincts screaming warnings. That's impossible. Our technology assessment of human capabilities was comprehensive. You had barely achieved fusion power when we arrived. Webb's laugh was genuinely amused. Admiral, what's the first rule of intelligence gathering? Verify your sources, Zephy's replied automatically. Exactly. And who provided you with intelligence? About human technological capabilities? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Dr. Thyrak checked his records with shaking manipulator arms. Our initial contact protocols. Standard procedure is to interface with the dominant species communication networks and governmental databases. You hacked the UEDF databases, Webb nodded approvingly. Very thorough. Unfortunately, the UEDF databases contained exactly what we wanted you to find. Outdated technology assessments, simplified military doctrine, conservative capability estimates. Everything designed to make you feel confident about a quick, decisive victory. Admiral Thyrak's exoskeleton was beginning to change color, a involuntary stress response. You're claiming your entire military presented false information? Not false, Webb corrected. Now somehow interfacing directly with the ship's main computer system through the medical bay's terminals. Just ... incomplete. The UEDF really was limited to the capabilities you observed. They really did have those weapons, those ships, those tactical doctrines. They were completely genuine in every measurable way. Then how Zephyrs began? Because they were never meant to win, Webb interrupted gently. They were meant to lose convincingly while buying time for the real evacuation protocols to execute. Dr. Thyrak's medical scanners were now showing readings that violated several known laws of biology. Webb's neural activity was operating at speeds that should have caused immediate brain death. His muscle fibers were demonstrating force multiplication beyond known cellular limits, and somehow his body was interfacing with Kytherian technology. On a quantum level. Colonel, Dr. Thyrak said carefully, I need you to understand that according to every scanner I have, what you're doing right now is physically impossible. Webb paused in his examination of their computer systems. Doctor, may I demonstrate something for you? Before anyone could respond, Webb moved. Not quickly in the way they understood speed. He simply ceased to be in one location and appeared in another. One moment he was standing by the medical terminals, the next he was directly in front of Admiral Thyrak, close enough to touch her, but making no threatening gestures. Enhanced reflexes, improved muscle density, accelerated cognitive processing, quantum-level cellular optimization, Webb explained conversationally, while Admiral Thyrak's weapon systems remained locked in their holsters, not because she chose not to draw them, but because her nervous system simply couldn't process and respond to his movement quickly enough. Standard special operations conditioning for long-term deep cover assignments. He stepped back and suddenly Thyrak could move again. How many humans received this ... conditioning? She asked, her voice barely controlled. All special operations personnel. Roughly 2 million active operatives at the time of the evacuation. Webb returned to the computer terminals, which were now displaying star charts that definitely weren't in the Kytherian databases. Plus support staff, intelligence analysts, logistics coordinators, technical specialists. Maybe 8 million. Total enhanced personnel. Science Commander Zephyrs was frantically checking his own records. Our intelligence estimated total human military forces at approximately 12 million across all services. That sounds about right, Webb agreed. 4 million UEDF personnel who engaged your forces using standard tactics and equipment. 8 million special operations personnel who disappeared into deep cover assignments before you even knew the war had started. Dr. Thyrak's instruments were now completely overwhelmed, showing impossible biological readings that suggested Webb was operating on principles their science couldn't explain. Colonel, these enhancement procedures you describe, they would require medical technology far beyond what we observed in human space. You observed what we wanted you to observe, Webb said, now displaying detailed technical schematics for technology that made Kytherian systems look primitive by comparison. Public hospitals, civilian research facilities, Defense Force medical bays. You never saw a special operations enhancement facility because they were built into places you'd never think to look. Where? Admiral Thyrak demanded. Webb smiled. And for the first time, it wasn't friendly. Asteroid mining stations, deep space construction platforms, seemingly abandoned research outposts. The places you dismissed as irrelevant because they appeared to have no military value. The implications hit Admiral Thyrak like a plasma cannon to the chest. The evacuation, those weren't refugee ships. Some were, Webb acknowledged. We did save millions of civilians. But the bulk of the evacuation fleet? Deployment vessels. 8 million enhanced operatives spreading across the galaxy to establish long-term intelligence networks, resource acquisition operations, and strategic positioning. For what purpose? Zephyrs whispered. Webb looked at him with something that might have been pity. Commander, what do you think happens when a species with 2 centuries of experience in covert operations, advanced enhancement technology, and intimate knowledge of their enemy's capabilities decides to take back what was stolen from them? The ship's alarm system suddenly activated, bathing the medical bay in red emergency lighting. Webb glanced at the displays he'd activated and nodded with satisfaction. Right on schedule, he said calmly. Admiral, you might want to contact your fleet command. I believe they're about to receive some unexpected visitors. Admiral Thyrak lunged for the communication controls, but Webb was already there, his hand gently preventing her access. I wouldn't, Admiral. Best to let this play out naturally. Don't worry according to current special operations doctrine. Prisoners of war are to be treated humanely. Prisoners? Thyrak stared at him in growing horror. Admiral, Webb said with renewed friendliness, did you really think one stasis pod drifting alone in space was an accident? That after 180 years of careful planning, we'd leave our return to chance? As if responding to his words, new contacts began appearing on the ship's long-range sensors. Ships emerging from quantum space, jumps with technology signatures unlike anything in the Kytherian databases. Welcome to Phase 2 of the human-Kytherian conflict, Webb announced. Population, 8 million enhanced operatives who have been waiting a very long time for this moment. The emergency klaxons wailed throughout the Dominion's edge as Admiral Thyrak watched her tactical displays fill with impossible contacts. Ships were emerging from quantum space all around their position vessels with energy signatures that registered as both familiar and utterly alien. They moved with precision that suggested centuries of coordination, positioning themselves in formations that were clearly planned down to the last detail. Admiral, Science Commander Zephyrs reported. His voice barely controlled. We're reading 47 distinct vessels. Configuration unknown, but their technology. Admiral, they're using modified Kytherian drive systems combined with power cores that shouldn't be possible. Webb observed the tactical display with professional interest. Impressive response time. The Kepler 442 team was always efficient. Though I noticed they've upgraded the hull configuration since I went into stasis. Adaptive armor plating, integrated quantum shields. Very nice improvements. Dr. Vorthik was staring at his scanner. Readings in shock. Colonel, those ships are broadcasting Kytherian identification codes. How is that possible? Because they are Kytherian ships, Webb explained patiently. Or they were, originally. Captured vessels, reverse-engineered technology, improved designs. 180 years is a long time, Doctor. Did you think? We spent it all sleeping? Admiral Thyrak activated her command protocols, trying to contact Hegemony Fleet Command. The communication channels responded normally, but the responses she received made her exoskeleton go cold. Command reports similar contact groups appearing throughout the sector. Estimated total, over 3,000 vessels. That sounds about right for a regional activation, Webb nodded approvingly. Though I imagine the numbers are significantly higher in core sectors. The Terra Australis group always was ambitious with their shipbuilding quotas. Terra Australis group? Zephyrs repeated weakly. Webb gestured to the holographic star map he'd accessed through their systems. Regional command structures. We divided the galaxy into operational sectors based on resource availability and strategic importance. Terra. Australis handled the core worlds. Scandinavian Command took the Outer Rim territories. Celtic Division managed the trade routes. Standard military organization. Distributed across several hundred light years. The implications were staggering. Dr. Thyrak checked his historical databases with shaking manipulators. You're describing a military infrastructure that spans the entire galaxy. The logistics alone would require about 173 years of careful preparation, Webb finished. We started planning Phase 2 the moment Phase 1, the strategic withdrawal, was confirmed successful. Admiral Thyrak felt her worldview crumbling. Strategic withdrawal. You keep using that term. Explain what actually happened during our conquest of human space. Webb settled into what appeared to be a briefing posture, completely relaxed despite being surrounded by his theoretical enemies. The Kytherian Hegemony arrived at Sol System on March 5th, 2156. Your advanced scouts had been monitoring our communications for approximately 6 months prior, assessing our military capabilities through standard electronic intelligence gathering. Correct. Thyrak confirmed automatically. What you didn't know was that we detected your scouts approximately 2 years before that. Our deep space monitoring arrays were significantly more advanced than what you observed in our public databases. We had been watching you approach for quite some time. Science Commander Zephyrs checked his records frantically. Impossible. Our stealth technology is effective against species with your technological baseline, Webb interrupted gently. But we'd been dealing with more subtle threats for decades before you arrived. The Andromedans never announced themselves either. The casual mention of another alien species sent chills through the Kytherian Command team. Dr. Thyrak's voice was barely a whisper. There were others? Oh yes, the Andromedans arrived in 2089. They were much more sophisticated than your people. No. Offense, quantum phase technology, consciousness transfer capabilities, molecular-level infiltration systems. They nearly succeeded in their takeover. Webb's expression grew distant, as if remembering an old campaign. That's actually when we developed the enhancement protocols. Had to level the playing field against an enemy that could exist as pure energy when convenient. Took us 37 years of constant warfare to finally convince them that Earth wasn't worth the cost. Admiral Thyrak realized she was having trouble processing the information. You fought a 37-year war against aliens we've never heard of? Successfully, I might add. The Andromedans withdrew to their own galaxy and agreed to a non-interference pact. Quite reasonable once they understood our capabilities. Webb smiled with genuine warmth. Wonderful negotiators, actually. They taught us quite a bit about long-term strategic thinking. But our intelligence showed no evidence of advanced human technology, Zephyrs protested. Because by the time you arrived, we'd learned the value of appearing weaker than we actually were, Webb explained. The Andromedan conflict taught us that when a superior force arrives, you don't meet them with obvious strength. You let them think they're winning while you prepare for a different kind of war entirely. Dr. Thyrak was frantically cross-referencing data. But timeline. If you fought the Andromedans from 2089 to 2126, that means when we arrived in 2156, we'd had 30 years to prepare for the next invasion. Webb confirmed. 30 years to analyze what worked against the Andromedans, refine our enhancement technology, develop distributed command structures, and plan a strategic response that would ensure species survival regardless of immediate tactical outcomes. The communication system suddenly activated without Admiral Thyrak's authorization. A human voice, speaking perfect Kytherian, filled the medical bay. This is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Recovery Force. Admiral Thyrak, you and your crew are now under the protection of the Geneva Conventions as revised by the Galactic Accords of 2298. Please prepare for peaceful transfer of command. Webb's face lit up with genuine joy. Sarah, still using the intimidation protocols, I see. How's the family? The voice warmed noticeably. Marcus, you magnificent bastard. Right on schedule as always. The kids are fine, grown up and running their own operations now. We'll catch up properly once we've secured the sector. Admiral Thyrak stared at the communication system in shock. Fleet Admiral Chun, that name was in our historical records. She died during the defense of Luna Base. No, Webb corrected. She evacuated from Luna Base, along with her entire command staff and 3 million enhanced personnel. Her death was documented to prevent your forces from hunting for surviving command elements. But we found her body. We have DNA confirmation, Dr. Vorthik protested. Webb's expression grew sad. You found her sister Jennifer, who volunteered to take Sarah's place in the final defense. Jennifer was a civilian botanist who chose to die as Fleet Admiral Chun to maintain operational security. We have memorial gardens across 50 worlds in her honor. The scope of human deception was becoming clear. Every piece of evidence the Kytherians had used to confirm their victory had been carefully orchestrated. Every database they'd accessed, every body they'd recovered, every intelligence report they'd gathered, all of it designed to support the narrative of human defeat while concealing the reality of strategic repositioning. 180 years, Admiral Thyrak said quietly. You've been planning this for 180 years. Actually, Webb said, consulting what appeared to be a mission chronometer built into his enhanced physiology. 187 years, 4 months, and 12 days. But who's counting? Outside the viewport, the Kytherian research vessel was now completely surrounded by ships that had once been their own technology, improved and enhanced beyond recognition by a species they'd thought they'd defeated nearly 2 centuries ago. Admiral, Webb said gently, there's something else you should know. The Kytherian Hegemony currently controls approximately 4,000 star systems across this sector of the galaxy. Correct, she replied automatically. As of 18 minutes ago, human forces have established operational control over approximately 3,943 of them. The remaining 57 systems are currently under negotiation. Admiral Thyrak's exoskeleton finally gave out, and she collapsed into her command chair. How? Webb's smile was sad but determined. Admiral, we've been your infrastructure maintenance crews for 180 years. We've been your miners, your engineers, your technical support staff. We've been living in your cities, working in your factories, maintaining your computer systems. We know every ship, every base, every command protocol in your entire empire, because we've been running it for you. The transfer of command proceeded with an efficiency that spoke of decades of preparation. Within 6 hours of the Terran Recovery Force's arrival, Admiral Thyrak found herself seated not in a detention cell, but in the Dominion's Edge's main conference room, which had been transformed into something resembling a diplomatic meeting space. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun looked remarkably similar to the historical records, except for the subtle signs of human enhancement that Thyrak was now learning to recognize, the precisely controlled movements, the too bright intelligence in her eyes, the way she seemed to process information faster than should be biologically possible. Admiral Thyrak, Chun said, settling into a chair that had been adjusted to accommodate Kytherian physiology. I want to begin by expressing our appreciation for your crew's treatment of Colonel Webb. Your medical staff showed genuine professionalism, and that will be noted in our final reports. Dr. Vorthik, who sat beside Thyrak with his usual scientific curiosity, now tempered by profound unease, leaned forward slightly. Fleet Admiral, may I ask about your enhancement procedures? The biological Modifications we've observed in Colonel Webb seem to exceed known limits of organic adaptation. Chun smiled, and Thyrak noticed that even her expressions carried a calculated quality. Doctor, what you've observed in Marcus represents our third-generation enhancement protocols. The procedures we developed during the Andromedan conflict were significantly more primitive. We've had 180 years to refine the process. Third generation? Science Commander Zephes asked weakly. Currently, we're field testing our 7th-generation protocols. Webb interjected from where he stood near the viewport, apparently monitoring fleet movements with casual expertise. Though the enhancement curves are approaching theoretical maximums, diminishing returns and all that, Admiral Thyrak felt compelled to ask the question that had been gnawing at her since the scope of human infiltration became clear. Fleet Admiral, how many of our citizens were actually human? Chun consulted a datapad with information that somehow seemed both precise and vast. Within your direct command structure? Approximately 30% of your technical staff, 45% of your intelligence analysts, and roughly 60% of your long-range reconnaissance personnel. The numbers were staggering. Thyrak thought of the Kytherians she had worked with for decades, trusted with classified information, relied upon for critical decisions. How is that level of infiltration even possible? Careful genetic modification, surgical alteration, psychological conditioning, and comprehensive cultural immersion training, Chun explained matter-of-factly. A human operative typically spent 3 to 5 years in preparation before assuming a Kytherian identity. Some of our deep cover agents have been in position for over a century. Webb turned from the viewport, his expression thoughtful. The fascinating thing is how many of them genuinely integrated into Kytherian society. We've had operatives request to remain in their assumed identities even after mission completion. Several have formed meaningful relationships, built careers, contributed positively to your communities. Dr. Vorthek was taking frantic notes, his scientific mind struggling to process the implications. The psychological complexity of maintaining false identities for decades. The potential for identity confusion, emotional breakdown, was a significant concern in the early phases, Chun acknowledged. We lost approximately 12% of our operatives to what we termed integration syndrome, agents who became so thoroughly assimilated that they forgot their original mission parameters. We consider them casualties of war, though they're often our most effective cultural ambassadors. The revelation hung heavy in the conference room. Thyrak realized that the Kytherian hegemony she had served her entire life had been, in large part, a human-guided simulation of itself. What happens now? She asked quietly. Chun's expression grew serious. That depends largely on choices made by Kytherian leadership over the next several days. We're currently in contact with your High Council, presenting them with 3 primary options. She activated a holographic display showing galactic political boundaries that were already shifting in real time. Option 1. Complete integration. Kytherian and human societies merge under a joint governing structure. Kytherians retain full citizenship rights and cultural autonomy, while humans provide technological advancement and strategic coordination. Option 2. Zephes asked. Peaceful partition. We divide current territories based on species preference and resource requirements. Kytherians who wish to maintain traditional society can relocate to designated worlds, while humans reclaim former territories and systems we've improved over the past 2 centuries. Webb moved to stand behind Chun's chair, his presence somehow both reassuring and ominous. Option 3 is complete human administration with Kytherian populations as protected minorities. Less appealing for obvious reasons, but still significantly better than the alternative, which is? Admiral Thyrak asked, though she suspected she already knew. Complete dissolution of the Kytherian hegemony and trial of leadership for crimes against sentient species. Chun said with the tone of someone discussing routine administrative procedures. "We have comprehensive evidence of systematic genocide, forced relocation, and cultural destruction across 47 different species over the past 3 centuries. The weight of galactic justice settling around them was almost palpable." Dr. Thyrak looked up from his notes with sudden understanding. "The other species you conquered, are they also?" "Many are extinct, unfortunately," Webb said sadly. "But we've maintained genetic archives, cultural databases, and resurrection protocols for most of them. The Valkyrian Reef Builders, the crystalline mines of Proxima 7, the Hive Collective of the Tau Ceti system, they can all be restored given sufficient resources and time." Chun's datapad chimed with an incoming message. She reviewed it quickly, then looked up with something approaching satisfaction. "Admiral, I'm pleased to inform you that the Kytherian High Council has voted to accept Option 1, integration rather than partition or dissolution." The relief in the room was immediate and obvious. Thyrak felt her exoskeleton relax for the first time in hours. "What does that mean practically?" "It means that tomorrow you'll wake up as Admiral Thyrak of the United Galactic Federation, rather than the Kytherian Hegemony," Webb explained with a genuine smile. "Your rank, your experience, your expertise, all of it remains valuable. We're going to need experienced military leaders for the challenges ahead." "Challenges?" Zephy's asked. Chun's expression grew distant, taking on the quality of someone looking toward distant horizons. "The Andromedans honored their non-interference pact for 130 years. But our intelligence suggests they're becoming interested in this galaxy again, and there are other concerns. Deep space monitoring stations have detected quantum signatures from beyond the galactic edge that don't match any known technology." Webb nodded grimly. "The universe is larger and stranger than any of us initially realized. The Kytherian Hegemony was built for conquest, but the United Galactic Federation will need to be built for survival." Admiral Thyrak looked around the conference room, seeing her world and her understanding of it transform in real time. "Fleet Admiral, may I ask why you chose integration over punishment? After what we did to Earth, to your people?" Chun was quiet for a long moment, then stood and walked to the viewport where the mixed fleet of human and converted Kytherian vessels moved in perfect coordination. "Admiral, we learned something important during our conflict with the Andromedans. Revenge feels satisfying in the moment, but it doesn't build the kind of future worth fighting for." She turned back to face the Kytherian officers. "Besides, Earth wasn't destroyed, it was evacuated. Our cities, our culture, our history, all of it was preserved and maintained by human operatives working within your own administration. In many ways, you helped us save ourselves." Webb moved to join Chun at the viewport. "The Earth you'll see when we return there next month is more beautiful than it ever was before the invasion. 180 years of careful restoration, ecological rehabilitation, and cultural preservation. It turns out that having the Galactic Empire's resources at your disposal makes remarkable things possible." Dr. Thyrak looked up from his notes with something approaching wonder. "You're going to show us Earth?" "Doctor," Chun said with a smile that carried the promise of extraordinary things, "we're going to show you wonders that will reshape your understanding of what's possible when species work together instead of against each other." Outside the viewport, the combined fleet began its journey toward humanity's homeworld, carrying with it the seeds of a new galactic civilization built not on conquest, but on the patient wisdom of a species that had learned to turn defeat into victory and enemies into allies. The age of the Kytherian Hegemony was over. The age of the United Galactic Federation had begun, and the universe would never be the same. The observation deck of the UGF New Geneva offered an unobstructed view of Earth as Admiral Thyrak had never imagined it could exist. From orbit, the planet appeared to glow with an inner light, not the harsh industrial illumination she remembered from Kytherian records, but something organic and alive that spoke of careful cultivation rather than exploitation. The atmospheric composition is remarkable, Dr. Thyrak murmured beside her, his scanner displaying readings that defied his previous understanding of planetary ecology. Oxygen levels 30% higher than our historical data suggested possible. Carbon dioxide at pre-industrial baselines, and the biodiversity indices. He paused, recalibrating his instruments. These numbers indicate more species variety than existed on Earth before human civilization began. Colonel Webb, now wearing the insignia of Integration Coordinator, joined them at the observation window. 6 months of working together had transformed their relationship from captor and prisoner to something approaching genuine respect. The restoration took longer than the original evacuation, he explained. But we had advantages the original Earth never possessed: genetic archives from across the galaxy, ecological knowledge from 47 different biospheres, and unlimited time to experiment with optimization. Science Commander Zephy's pointed toward the continent below them. Are those cities? The energy signatures don't match any architectural principles in our databases. Bio-integrated urban planning, Webb replied with obvious pride. Every building is essentially a living organism, drawing energy from photosynthesis, processing waste through biological systems, adapting to environmental conditions in real time. The Valkyrian reef builders taught us the foundational principles before their extinction, and we've spent 2 centuries perfecting the implementation. Admiral Thyrak felt a familiar pang of guilt at the mention of another species the hegemony had destroyed. The restoration protocols were working. She had seen 3 Valkyrian consciousness matrices successfully integrated into new biomechanical bodies just last week, but the knowledge of what had been lost still weighed heavily on her. "Admiral," a voice said behind them, "you're brooding again." Fleet Admiral Chun approached with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in their environment. Her enhancement modifications were more subtle than Webb's, designed for command coordination rather than field operations. But Thyrak had learned to recognize the telltale signs of human optimization. "Fleet Admiral," Thyrak replied formally, though their relationship had become significantly less rigid over the months of integration. "I was considering the implications of the restoration project. The resources required, the time investment, the technological integration. It represents a level of commitment to environmental stewardship that challenges fundamental assumptions about civilization development." Chun smiled, settling against the observation window with practiced ease. "You're wondering how a species capable of this level of ecological sophistication could have appeared so primitive to your initial assessments." The question had occurred. "To me," Thyrak admitted. "The answer is embarrassingly simple," Webb interjected. "We learned it from you." Dr. Thyrak looked up from his instruments in confusion. "Learned what from us?" "Patience," Chun explained. "Before the Kytherian invasion, humanity was developing along fairly predictable technological lines. Advanced computing, space travel, genetic engineering, but we were still thinking in terms of decades rather than centuries. The Andromedan conflict taught us the value of long-term planning, but your invasion taught us something more important." "Which was?" Zephy's asked. "That apparent weakness can be a form of strength, and that the most effective victories are often invisible to the defeated," Webb said. "Every Kytherian world we've integrated has become more productive, more stable, and more scientifically advanced than it was under hegemony control. But the improvements happened so gradually that most citizens attributed them to natural progression, rather than systematic intervention." Admiral Thyrak processed this information with growing understanding. "You've been applying the same infiltration techniques to planetary management that you used for political control." "Exactly. Human agricultural specialists optimizing food production, human engineers improving infrastructure efficiency, human ecologists enhancing environmental stability. all working within existing Kytherian administrative frameworks, making improvements that appeared to be natural developments. Shun activated a holographic display showing galactic productivity statistics spanning the past 2 centuries. Resource extraction up 400%, while environmental degradation decreased by 80%. Population satisfaction indices at historical highs across all integrated worlds. Technological advancement accelerated without corresponding increases in resource consumption. The Kytherian hegemony never achieved those metrics, Thyrak observed quietly. Because the hegemony was designed for conquest, not cultivation, Webb replied. Every system was optimized for rapid resource extraction and population control. Effective for building an empire, catastrophic for maintaining a civilization. Dr. Thyrak was studying the planetary scans with renewed fascination. The integration protocols. They're not just political, are they? You're fundamentally restructuring how galactic civilization operates. We're applying lessons learned from managing Earth's restoration to every world in former hegemony space, Chun confirmed. Bio-integrated architecture, ecological optimization, cultural preservation, technological advancement balanced with environmental stewardship. Within 50 years, every inhabited world in this sector will be more productive and stable than anything in recorded galactic history. And the other threats you mentioned? Admiral Thyrak asked. The Andromedans. The unknown signatures from beyond the galactic edge? Webb's expression grew serious. Still developing. Our deep space monitoring arrays have detected quantum disturbances, suggesting massive technological activity approximately 40,000 light-years beyond the galactic rim. Whatever's out there is operating on a scale that makes both human and Kytherian civilizations look primitive by comparison. Which is why the integration had to succeed, Shun added. Humanity learned from the Andromedan conflict that individual species survival depends on collective galactic stability. Whatever's coming, we'll need every advantage we can develop human strategic thinking. Kytherian military organization, Vulcarian bioengineering, and technologies from 47 other species were in the process of restoring. The observation deck fell silent as the implications settled around them. Below, Earth continued its slow rotation, a testament to what was possible when destruction was transformed into cultivation, when conquest became cooperation. Fleet Admiral Thyrak said finally, when these external threats arrive, and I assume you believe they will, what role will former hegemony personnel play in the defense planning? Shun's smile carried the confidence of someone who had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this question. Admiral, you're going to help us save the galaxy. All of us together, using every technique we've learned about turning apparent defeat into ultimate victory. And if we fail? Dr. Thyrak asked quietly. Webb looked out at the stars with the calm assessment of a soldier who had already calculated every possible outcome. Then at least we'll fail as allies rather than enemies, fighting for something worth preserving rather than something worth conquering. Outside the viewport, Earth completed another rotation in its ancient dance around Sol, no longer the lost homeworld of a defeated species, but the heart of a galactic civilization that had learned to transform its greatest weaknesses into its most powerful strengths. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but for the first time in galactic history, it was also full of hope. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.